Hey, sister girl on films, you don't wanna miss a thing, better stay tuned in. So lay back, get into the vibe, in the mood. Real reviews from a sister's point of view. Trailer reactions, movies and TV. So entertaining and authentic, believe me. So roll that footage, I'm ready to chill. Time to hang out with my sister girl. Hey, sister girl on films. Hey, sister girl on films. Hey.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to my channel. It's your girl, Sister Girl on Films. And as you can tell by the title, y'all, we are back with episode 4 of season 2 of P-Valley, Demethrius. So if you're interested in my thoughts and opinions on this episode, then stay right there. We're going to get right into it. Now, with this episode, this just was not my favorite episode of the season so far. And quiet as it's kept, this might be my least favorite episode, but we will get into that in just a little bit. I know some of y'all be like, what? But for me, this episode didn't really do it for me. So let's start off with, I can't even believe I'm about to say this, Big Bone and Diamond. Yeah, so we'll just go ahead and put both their storylines together. So Diamond has returned to the Pynk. Not necessarily to work yet, but he's there to help out because the Pynk has been shut down for COVID violations and health code violations, and they sent out SOS to everybody in the group chat. And Diamond, even though he's not working at the Pynk anymore, is still in the group chat. So he pulled up, you know, to help out Clifford because, you know, the Pynk is like family to him. You know, he's not necessarily 100% comfortable in the Pynk because of everything that happened on murder night. And when he goes into the paradise room, there's a puddle of water in the middle of the floor. I don't know if I missed how that water got there. I don't know if it was as a result of, I don't know. Y'all let me know in the comments below if you know how the water got there. I don't remember if they talked about that or if I just missed something, but there was a puddle of water in the middle of the floor. And so Diamond looks into the water, and as he's staring, sees his reflection, like a creepy hand comes out of it, and he's kind of staring at it, and it's freaking him out. And then Big L comes in, breaks him out of his trance, and Diamond doesn't really say anything about it, but he kind of just looks because he's not feeling the vibe in the paradise room. We know the paradise room is where Demethrius was killed, so, and that's where his spirit is hanging out. He has taken up residence in the paradise room. So yeah, so Diamond, by the end of the episode, it seems like he's leaning more towards coming back to work security at the Pynk, but he still has his reservations just because he's not feeling the energy at the Pynk. The last thing that we see with Diamond is he meets Big Bone. Child, look, I don't know who Miracle Watts knows on this show. If her manager is really good friends with somebody on this show. I don't know why this decision was made to give her this very lengthy scene with Diamond. It could have been because, you know, they're a real life couple and now she's pregnant and they're about to have a whole family together, and maybe they thought it would be cute for fans, but it wasn't. It just wasn't. Baby, look, Miracle Watts is gorgeous. You can't take that away from her. Her face is beautiful. Her body is beautiful. If you go on her social media, she seems like she's a really sweet girl, very funny. But baby, being a thespian was not what the Lord put on your life, ma'am. That was a look. The acting in that scene was so bad.
How long you been riding?
Riding bikes or?
The editing was terrible.
Crazy.
Like, everything about that scene felt forced. It did nothing to drive the plot. I don't see how it would be relevant to anything. The music choice for the scene was just odd. Like, the music was ominous, but it was supposed to be a flirty scene. I don't know what was happening with that scene, but it was god awful, and they just should have opted not to put it in the show. It was terrible. I feel like there was another way for these two characters to meet and flirt, and it would have worked a lot better. But this back alley where it looked like the beginning of Red Shoe Diary episode, child, get it out my face. All right, so briefly we're gonna talk about Mississippi and Rome. I don't trust this nigga Rome. Okay, something about him just is icky. He is just gross to me. He's always like been really predatory towards Mississippi. He really kind of gives me pimp vibes in the way that he kind of deals with her. Even throughout the episode, he was just being really insensitive to you know, the idea of police brutality, and kind of just coming at Big Teak, being disrespectful, you know. He was just really being like antagonizing in this episode, and I think that's because we're really gonna see how villainous he can be in the next episode. And then we also got to see how triggered Mississippi can get as a result of her being an abused woman, and how that PTSD really shows up for her. And I feel like PTSD was really like a big theme of this episode, because it definitely showed up with Big Teak, it definitely showed up with Roulette, it showed up with Mississippi. And Mississippi, you know, seeing Big Teak get so upset, it really frightened her. And you know, it wasn't just Big Teak himself, but I think that it was a lot. I think that it had to do with her just, you know, being afraid of seeing a man escalated and yelling at a woman, you know, was probably bringing up memories of her and Derek and how abusive he is to her. I think that also she kind of realized in that moment that Gidget, even though she's a good friend to her, if she has things in terms of race that she wants to talk about, Gidget is not going to be as emotionally supportive as she needs her to be. Because in this episode, Gidget was very just like clueless, I guess, of the severity of the things that were going on around them in terms of in the world and world issues. And I thought it was a stark contrast between Gidget and Duffy. So Duffy, when he talked to Roulette, he sat on the floor with her, he really listened to her. You know, Roulette kind of implied, you know, that white people just kind of get away with whatever they want. He didn't take it personally. He just kind of just listened to her. And I really love that. And versus Gidget, who saw how upset Big Teak was and really wasn't listening to him. And you could tell what was upsetting him. And she's telling him to calm down. And she like rallying him up. And I wish her mother would and all this. So it was just like a stark contrast in those two characters. And I really think it kind of speaks to how when it comes to Black issues and things that sometimes we deal with, even if we have, you know, people outside of our culture, outside of our race that, you know, we are friends with and we bond with, sometimes we need them to show up in different ways that either we feel like they're not capable of doing because of just sheer, you know, just not knowing, or they're not willing to show up in the way we need them to just because they don't give a shit, you know. And I think that, to me, that's kind of how I looked at this episode, especially with those two characters who just happen to be white, both kind of dealing with this very sensitive topic, but in two very different ways. So again, that was something that I did like about this episode. It wasn't a lot, but I did like that. So I don't trust Rome. I feel like at some point in this season, he's either going to try to assault Mississippi, or he's going to go ahead and go through with it. But I don't trust him. Mississippi is not safe around him, and I think he knows that she's an abused woman, so he's going to try to manipulate her. So we'll see next episode, but get him out of here. I hate him. So let's go ahead and move on to Andre. Yeah, Andre. So first and foremost, Andre is definitely running for mayor of Chucalissa. I've kind of been talking about that the last couple episode recaps and review, but he is for sure now throwing his hat in the race. And so Andre finally takes his ass home. And I kind of had a suspicion when we looked at what was coming up for this episode that he was going to catch his wife cheating, because the way she was looking at her little doctor friend a couple episodes ago when she was on the phone with Andre, I was like, something ain't right here. But lo and behold, Andre finds his wife cheating on him with one of her doctor colleagues, and possibly even like an ex-boyfriend. I can't say I feel bad for Andre, because Negro, you was trying to cheat on her all last season. Child, please. It is what it is. I was a little confused when the wife was like, Andre, where's your mask? I said, girl, are you just in shock? Like, why are you worried about a mask? And Andre said what I was thinking. He was like, why are you asking about my mask and you had this man's penis in your mouth? And I was like, exactly. And I can imagine the room probably smells like Badussi. And you're talking to me very closely in my face with penis breath. Girl, back up. Put your mask on. Because, no, let's not do this. And basically, you know, she's trying to say how, you know, Andre hasn't been there for her and she was lonely and it just was something that just happened. But we know it's probably been going on the whole time Andre been gone. And when Andre says that he intends to run for mayor of Chucalissa, she laughs in his face and it's like, you're not gonna win. Like, why would you want to be mayor of Chucalissa when you wouldn't even take the job offer from my father? Like, typical you. And Andre pretty much just kind of lets it be known that her family never accepted him. He never felt like he was good enough for his wife. So Andre leaves, takes his ass back to Chucalissa, and can't wait to tell Autumn ass, you know, that his wife cheated on him, and that he plans to run for mayor. Autumn gets excited about it, and she's kind of somewhat supportive, but I can't trust this hoe as far as I can throw her because she always got some tricks up her sleeve. So, yeah. So we'll see how this go. I also kind of feel like later on in this season, it might be revealed that Mayor Ruffin is actually Andre's real daddy and not his godfather, because he's doing a lot for Andre in this wheel, more than what a godfather would. And he had a lot of kids and a lot of shit going on. And I just find it very odd that he's doing all of this for Andre. I could be wrong, but I think that might be revealed by the end of this season. Mercedes didn't have a whole lot going on in this episode, but you know, there were some interesting things that happened with Mercedes. She gets a text message from who she thinks is the coach to kind of finish what they started a couple nights ago when she had to leave in a hurry to go take care of Terica. And then when she gets to the condo, she finds Farrah, who is Coach's wife, there. And so they have like an awkward exchange, and Farrah's being really flirty. Mercedes is kind of picking it up, but she's also kind of ignoring it. And then, you know, it comes to find out that Coach did not text Mercedes at all. It was Farrah the whole time, because she's like super intrigued with Mercedes. And she even says at one point that she expected to really hate Mercedes, but she really ends up just kind of hating herself. And so Mercedes, you know, was showing concern, because it can be concerning, you know, when someone says something like that. And then Farrah is like, I can't believe I'm crying in front of a stripper. And Mercedes is like, bitch, what? Don't disrespect me. And so it was a little tense for a second, but then Farrah was like, you know, I didn't mean that. And then they started making out, and then they bump uglies, and it's a whole thing. And at the end of it all, I feel like Mercedes is still not okay with her decision to kind of be Coach's paid mistress. But, you know, I think she is kind of realizing that right now she's kind of in a situation where it's one of her only choices, especially with the Pynk being closed right now. And speaking of the Pynk being closed, honey, let's talk about this wench Autumn. Now, I said a couple of, I think episode 2, that I don't trust Autumn. I don't like this heifer. Okay. And so she really kind of showed her ass in this episode. I feel like it was already implied that her intent is to sell the Pynk. Like, out the gate, she's just waiting on the right offer. I thought that Uncle Clifford was also on board with it, but I think where he really is pissed off with Autumn and then the fact that her intention all along has been to sell the Pynk. And she doesn't care who buys it as long as it's an offer that she's okay with taking. And I think that's what's pissing Uncle Clifford off, because it sounded like last episode that he was okay if the price was right to sell the Pynk and try to figure it out, you know, if they got enough money. But now that he realizes that Autumn might have some ulterior motives, I don't think he's okay with that. And it seems like she's really trying to be slick and do stuff behind his back, and he's not really fooling with her. We also see in this episode that she's still haunted by the death of Montavious. Like, literally, like, his ghost is like stalking her at the at the club that she is living in. And it was also revealed in this episode that she is staying at the Pynk. So yeah, Autumn is just all over the place. Like, I'm not sure what they're doing with Autumn right now. I really don't. It's kind of weird. Next up, let's go to Patrice. So Patrice probably should have been closer to the beginning because there wasn't a whole lot happening with her with this episode either. She has officially put her hat in the race also for mayor, which I kind of talked about a couple episodes as well. I kind of saw it coming, but she is for sure going to run for mayor of Chucalissa. Now, Uncle Clifford is a little nervous because Patrice is 1,000% against the strip club, and if she wins this race, then the Pynk for sure is gonna get shut down. Like, she's gonna have none of it, and I wouldn't be surprised if she tried to shut it down and take over the property so her church can be there, and then she can try to sell the church, and when the casino come to give more money. Child, y'all know Patrice is devious, honey. But you know, she's kind of jumping in the race under this whole guise of being about the people of Chucalissa and, you know, just the empowerment of the black people in the community, which we all know is a bunch of bullshit. All this is about Patrice, just looking out for Patrice, even down to her theatrics during the uprisings and the protests that were happening in the city, and her showboating and telling people to go home and calm down and let your rage be the girl, shut up. Just stop. Because it's always a scheme somewhere up underneath your sleeve, Patrice. But I like it. Because I don't like Mayor Wayne either. He's a piece of shit too. Right now, Chucalissa, the future ain't looking too bright for y'all, okay? The citizens, I don't know what y'all need to do. But right now, your choices for mayor are Wayne, Patrice, and Andre. Next, let's go ahead and go to Roulette. So, last episode I talked about Roulette and the color red and the symbolism behind it when it comes to Roulette. And so in this episode, we see that Roulette is not wearing her signature red and black hair. Her hair is purple and black. We don't see a whole lot of red on her. But I think that has a lot to do with the fact that in this episode, we got to see more of the actual woman who takes on the alter ego of Roulette versus seeing Roulette. We still don't know her real name, so we're just gonna keep calling her Roulette. But in this episode, we really got to see a more human side to Roulette, and I think that's why we only saw one little hint of red this episode on Roulette. And if y'all notice, she had some slides on, like some little furry slides that had some red on them, and that's all the red she had on this whole episode. And I think that's because there's still a little bit of Roulette in her, so it's still a little bit of that fiery, risky, volatile, kind of has a lot of rage in her. We saw that when she got in the fight with Brazil, the other stripper. But most of this episode was about her human side and her dealing with her grief and how frustrating it is to see police brutality still happening and identifying, you know, the event that happened. They didn't say George Floyd, but I can imagine that's probably what they're referring to, the event that happened, and how it really made her think of her brother who was also killed by the police. And I did appreciate that. Again, this play on colors, it's just so subtle that we were able to see a little bit of that red, because that Roulette alter ego is still a part of who she is, but it's so much more to her than that. And I feel like I appreciated us getting a lot more about her backstory. And I really liked the scene with her and Big L, and Big L just really kind of identifying and connecting with her and realizing that it was more to her than, you know, her just being a stripper or her, you know, turning tricks on the side. But it was something deeper there, and I appreciate that we got to see more Roulette. So I'm starting to like this character. She's starting to grow on me now that we get to see a more human side of her. So kudos to the writers on that part, because there wasn't a whole lot happening in this episode, but that was definitely a highlight for me. So now let's get to Uncle Clifford. So Uncle Clifford, again, probably could have moved up a little bit because he didn't have a ton going on, but I kind of attached the Pynk with Uncle Clifford. That's why I kind of consider one of the most interesting storylines of this episode. So in the opening scene of the show, we have a very chaotic opening scene. I don't know if that was intentional, but it just seemed very like all over the place. Like the way the dancers was dancing was very chaotic. It could have been a definite style choice, but it was just messy, honey. And so we have the health inspector, who was the lady from last season, who was the lady who was just recently divorced, who was in there trying to spend her settlement. Well, she's the health inspector for the city, and she's back, and she's in there having the time of her life. She got her gloves on, she's double masked up, but she wanted to see some cheeks clapping. And so at first she's okay with nobody wearing a mask, but then that heifer sneezed all up in her face, and it was so disgusting. But it pissed her off, as you could imagine, especially her being one of the health inspectors for the city. So she immediately goes to Uncle Clifford, is like, shut this shit down right now. Ain't nobody wearing a mask, ain't nobody social distancing, y'all ain't following none of the protocol. And I have been kind of thinking this whole time, like, if they shut Patrice down, it's only gonna be a matter of time before the Pynk gets shut down, because they weren't following no rules. Like they said, the quarantine was lifted, the stay-at-home order was lifted, and they just went back to business as usual with half the people wearing masks, half the people not wearing masks. So Uncle Clifford and So Uncle Clifford is given a citation, and she lets him know, y'all got 24 hours to get this place up to code, or you are going to have, I think it was like $20,000 fine. It was a crazy amount of money that the Pynk ain't got. And so Uncle Clifford was like, basically like, heifer, we know you. You was the wench that fell asleep underneath the table the last time we was open because you cheated on your husband with his mama. And so she like, okay, and then she puts down the fine to like $11,000 or something like that, or she cuts it by $11,000. I don't know, but they rally all the troops together, basically all the dancers in the club, and they do what they can to try to get the Pynk up to code. It doesn't work. They don't meet any of the requirements, so they're still at risk of being shut down. So they still kind of have to figure that out. And in the midst of all this madness, Uncle Clifford finds out that Autumn's devious ass was always intending to sell the Pynk, and he's pissed off about it. And you know, he don't trust her at this point, and I don't blame him. And so I think it'll be interesting to kind of see the dynamic between Autumn and Uncle Clifford, because they was already kind of at odds, but now that he knows for sure that she don't give a damn who it is, when it happens, if somebody give her the right amount that she's looking for, she's going to sell the Pynk. I think Uncle Clifford was open to the idea of selling the Pynk, but he cares about the girls, and the Pynk is, you know, holds a special place in his heart. We'll see how this plays out with them, but I'm just kind of tired of this whole the Pynk being up for sale and Autumn. I'm just tired of the storyline. I ain't gonna lie to y'all. All right, and last but not least, speaking of Uncle Clifford, let's talk about little Murda and Big Teak. So even though I have not spoken about this, it always has kind of been in the back of my mind that Big Teak and little Murda's relationship may have been more than a friendship. Really, that's just based on, you know, how they embraced each other when Big Teak got out of prison, how little Murda reacted when Big Teak was lying in the hearse after his fight with Pico, how Big Teak kind of spoke about little Murda, sending him his raps when he was in solitary confinement in prison. There were a lot of little cues and moments here and there that kind of made me feel like their relationship was more than just a friendship, but I didn't want to jump the gun and make that assumption, because I felt like men can have and should be able to have amazing friendships where they really love and care about each other, and there not be any type of sexual undertone to it. But nope. Not P Valley, child. They had to make it another love story, like a little love triangle, and I don't know if I'm feeling it. And it could just be because I'm all about Lil Murda and Uncle Clifford's relationship. But technically, I guess little Murda was cheating on Big Teak once he got out of prison with Uncle Clifford. I don't know, but but let's rewind a little bit. So Big Teak is really having a really strong emotional reaction to the news of, you know, another black man being killed by the police. And I feel like everyone is just being super insensitive about it. And again, this is where that PTSD is really showing up for Big Teak. I think it's something that happens for a lot of men and women that are incarcerated and come out. It's something that's not treated as often as it should, because that's just a traumatic life experience to have to be, you know, in prison for any extent of time. And it really sounds like Big Teak is really, really just impacted and does not trust the police, doesn't feel valued as a man, a black man in America. And I think that him being around somebody like Rome, who is just an asshole and entitled and seems to be very disconnected from the reality of the world. And in this episode, being around Gidget, who it just seems kind of clueless and again doesn't really care about what's happening and how it's impacting the group of black people that she's riding with. And so I think all of it just became too much for Big Teak, him still trying to get adjusted to being outside of prison and things like that. It just kind of all came to a head in this episode. And I did feel like the actor that plays Big Teak did a very good job in this episode, conveying that pain and that frustration of how the world will continue to see him as, you know, this horrible person. It's almost as a villain because he's a black man. And I did appreciate that they touched on that topic, but then it kind of just went left when it all of a sudden became him being jealous of Uncle Clifford and Lil Murda. So there was a lot happening in this episode, and maybe because if we're touching on heavy topics, maybe this wasn't the episode to maybe reveal that they were in, you know, a relationship or were lovers or involved or whatever the dynamic of their relationship is and was. But I will say, when Big Teak said, all this time you was out, you ain't never sent me no postcard, I was like, exactly. Postcards are romantic. And Big Teak felt how I would have felt. Like, where my postcard at? So it'll be interesting to see, you know, how this plays out. Like, we know that Big Teak does fly off the handle. So is he going to have a jealous moment where he can't hold in his feelings for Lil Murda and acts in a way that makes it very clear that him and Lil Murda are, you know, romantically involved? You know, what does that look like? Because Big Teak is really, again, very unpredictable. And side note, he was wearing red in this episode when he was going off. Just saying. I'm not letting up on that, okay? But yeah, so that was pretty much it for this episode. Again, like I said, this is probably so far my least favorite episode this season. The editing in this episode was not very good. Y'all know I said my last recap that each episode usually there's a different director, editor, writer, all the things. Different editor from last episode to this one, and I could tell, like the scene with Lucky sneezing on the health inspector, the way they edited it was very jarring and I didn't like it. It wasn't smooth. There were a couple of scenes where the audio voiceover, because you know the actors always have to go back in after they shoot a scene and record their voice over just so that it's more clear. And so there were times when the audio didn't match the lips of the actor. That just annoys me when that happens. And so that is an editing thing. The direction of this episode, I wasn't a huge fan of. It was just a lot. I didn't like the writing in this episode. I thought that some of the dialogue was very forced. I thought some of the scenes were very forced. Even putting in the girls that were like, if you can't go to Bella Noche, then where the hell can you go? I mean, I get it, and I get how they keep throwing in these pop culture references. But first of all, that was like an old ass reference. So I don't know why we put that in there. So this was just a really struggle episode. So next episode looks like it's going to be all about Mississippi and Rome. And it looks like Autumn's probably going to start having some flashbacks again about her time with Montavious and the baby and all that. So we'll see. Hopefully episode 5 is better than this one, because other than a couple moments here with Roulette and Big L and Teak in his performance, this episode was giving nothing. So yeah, y'all. So let me know in the comments below what you thought about episode 4 of P-Valley. And as always, y'all, like this video, share this video, subscribe to my channel, and I'm gonna see y'all next week for episode 5 of P-Valley. Thank y'all so much for y'all support, and I'm gonna see y'all next time.
Hey, look, I talk my shit and keep it honest, keep it independent. I hear them hating, but that's only cause they inconsistent. He said the weapon wouldn't prosper, now they wouldn't form. I'm about to golf, I hit the